Welcome, Stephen Broad.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us today. Could you please introduce yourself shortly?
Sure. I'm Stephen Broad. I'm Director of Research and Knowledge Exchange at the Royal Conservatoriju of Scotland in Glasgow. And in that job, I have the general responsibility for doctoral students and for staff research in the institution. I'm also the chair of the European Platform for Artistic Research in Music, or EPARM.
EPARM. Cool. Thank you very much. As today's topic is about exploration in music as career, the word career quite brings some attention, especially to us music students. This is something we all work for and are eager to know on how to achieve having a career. So my first question would be, what are some strategies and skills that you believe students can develop to make themselves more attractive for future employers?
I might think about this question most especially around doctoral students, since that's what I know best. I think, may I address the question of skills first?
Of course.
And then strategies?
Yes, please.
Because I think with doctoral studies in music especially, you have a double quantity of focus. You have the musician's focus, which has been developed over years in the bachelor's and master's, years in the practice room. You have that musician's focus and discipline, together with perhaps a renewed and very challenging focus in the research project. And the temptation always is to close down on that very, very focused project, to give it your undivided attention. That's the natural response. And I think as a musician, that's even increased because we're so used to giving our undivided attention to each phrase, each note, each nuance. So my advice around the skills is actually to think about the complementary skills, the wider skills that you are developing as a researcher, but also to think about the options that are available to you as a doctoral student, because almost every institution will support those doctoral studies with a range of ancillary options, which can sometimes seem distant or remote from your own studies, but which actually are of vital importance. You may not seem it, but they're of vital importance. I'm talking about the skills of critical, well, I was about to say critical thinking, but I'm going to say critical artistry instead of critical thinking. Critical artistry, that's what's distinct about doctoral studies in our area. Critical artistry, but also the complementary skills of project management.
Yes.
Seeing a project through over many years, which is what a doctorate requires. Yes. So those are the skills, those are examples of the skills that are useful in the longer term in your career. But in terms of the strategy, you know, how to go about acquiring those, I think being open to and taking advantage of everything that your wider context offers you. Whether that's training that's on offer from your institution, or what you can learn from your fellow doctoral students. Because each doctoral project is different. There's a welter of different experience and skills available there, if you're open to them.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, thank you. Because also, as I am a musician myself, we often are tunnel visioned on having the mastery of our instrument and spend hours in the room. And of course, when an opportunity arises, such as strategical viewpoints, as in we have a job offer for you here, or we would like you to be an orchestra member for this one concert, we're very eager to jump onto this opportunity. But when it comes to skills such as management and also writing, we are very I feel like we're not as prepared as we should be. So I'm wondering, how should an institution prepare their students better to make sure that they're capable of being good researchers?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think the institution, and by this I really mean it comes from the professors, but the institution can try to create a climate of openness and collaboration, both between the doctoral students, but also as a kind of life attitude.
Yeah.
And it is natural and important that people do spend and have spent hours in the practice room.
Yeah.
That's necessary.
Of course.
But we also have to create a situation where people are confident that other work they do, whether that's in the library or whether it's much softer work in terms of networking and understanding other perspectives, that work is valuable, going to be valuable in the long term for their career.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So this also brings me then back to more of your field of this practice-based research. So how do you then see this as a benefit for students shaping their career prospects?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the question, isn't it? The key skill for me that practice-based research or artistic research fosters is this idea of critical artistry that I mentioned earlier. It's a questioning attitude that is nonetheless rooted in deep skill.
Yes.
And the two things have to come together. It's a questioning attitude that's fundamental to work in any evolving context. And in fact, of course, all contexts are evolving. It doesn't matter how traditional you might think your aspiration is. All of those traditional career options for music are changing.
Yes.
They're growing and changing all the time. And so for me, that critical artistry, that ability to question what you're doing, what your colleagues are doing, what our sector is doing, what our art forms are doing, that questioning ability is the key skill for dealing with as yet unsolved problems, as yet unforeseen circumstances.
Understand.
And as yet unimagined innovations, the things that we can't perceive now, but which in 10 years' time will shape those careers. You need to have the right resilient frame of mind to deal with those things.
Yes. All right. Thank you. That also brings me to when we're talking about creating this research and being critical artistically. For me as a student, and I see this with many students, I feel that we don't have we're not confident enough. And then the role of the teacher or an appropriate expert who guides us through this journey seems quite important. How do you see this, the role of a guidance?
Yeah, so within any doctoral study, the supervisor is absolutely crucial.
Yes.
And you mentioned confidence, and there's a process of confidence building in that supervision of a doctoral student. There's something very difficult about doctoral supervision, which also for me is one of its most attractive features in my working life, and that is that you move from a position of being almost like a traditional teacher at the beginning through a long period of change, which when a student studies part-time might be 6 or even 8 years, to a position where you are a colleague. And this process unfolds sometimes easily, but often at different speeds at different times, where you need to be more or less supportive as a supervisor. Sometimes you need to be hands-off, you need to let it happen. And I think that's a skill that's not easily developed. If you imagine a manual car, you can tell I'm from the UK, a manual car, then that learning to use the clutch and to smoothly transition from one thing to another is a feature of learning. And that there's a clutch control in supervision, which I think is its crucial skill. But you were asking me about what kind of support. I think what you're talking about is autonomy support.
Yes.
You're cultivating the autonomy of the student. And that's not always what happens in music learning and teaching before that point.
That's...
Perhaps it should be, but it's not always.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also why I'm wondering if students are actually prepared during their normal studies to go make the switch to doctoral studies, or do you believe that everyone can, with patience and correct guidance, is everyone suited for this, or are students?
No, I don't think it's for everyone.
No, okay.
I don't think it's for everyone, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important that we don't conceive of things as a sort of pyramid of, this is Peter Renshaw's phrase, a pyramid of failure.
Okay. Yes.
You know, where your options seem to die.
Yeah.
Because the reality is not that. But it doesn't mean that the smaller number who begin doctoral studies are the peak of the pyramid. They are not.
No.
Some people are suited to this and some people aren't. It's not right.
Yes, some people take the path. I agree, of course, but for example, if we look at some of my own prospects, if I would be interested in writing research, then I wonder, do I have enough knowledge? Am I prepared well enough to be critical in perceiving information, especially now with all the abundance of information we have, artificial intelligence? It's very easily to have wrong information found, and then how can we prepare students better for this? So if we say the pyramid, of course, it's not for everyone, but how do we make it a possibility for those who want it?
Well, I have my personal views on this, so I think for me, this question of an openness, and even the idea of critical artistry, if I can go back to that phrase, it can be cultivated at any level.
Yes.
And I often think back to I was a pianist as a teenager, not a pianist now, but as a pianist as a teenager, and I had a wonderful teacher who, if my interpretative approach to the music was not what she expected, she always insisted that I practice and develop my own interpretation, and practice and develop her suggestions, and hold them both together.
Yeah.
And this was just a teaching technique that she had, but it meant that my ideas were given value, which was really powerful.
Yeah.
But also that her ideas were never posited as the ultimate authority, but as an example, as something to be considered and to be judged in its own terms.
Yeah, so this kind of freedom is quite important, actually, that you can have your own ways about it and have another, let's say, a more educated person guide you through it, but also leaving the space for you to have your own ideas in your own way.
I think authority is a very tricky word, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we've got, within authority, we've got author, as in the originator, but we've got authority as in a rule, strict.
Yes.
Authoritarian.
Yes.
It contains a lot of things, and we have to manage that very carefully as teachers, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. So for example, also if you're more on the research side, and do you see this as really a very important step for career development as a musician, or do you believe that there's other paths that people can take that also can bring them more career, or do you really believe that doing research and going out and exploring new works, networking with other people, do you believe that this is the way?
No, I don't believe it's the way. I think there are lots of different routes, but I do think it provides a certain distinctive set of experiences and skills which are valuable to the whole career. You've used the word exploration a couple of times.
Yes.
I think that's really, really interesting, because the idea of research, fundamentally, whichever the discipline, whatever the paradigm, research is a journey of discovery.
Yes.
And it can sometimes be a long, slow and painful process of discovery, but it's a process of discovery. So that metaphor of exploration, I think is really interesting in this context, because as well as, what it is that you might find in the course of your research, the outcome, the product of the research, you're also developing skills of skills of planning, planning a long-term project, as I mentioned, skills like seeking funding, very practical things. You're developing a deep understanding of the challenges that you're likely to face out there in the unknown. Even if you don't know what those specific challenges are, you get a sense of what they are likely to be. And also an understanding that it's okay for them to be unknown. You know, it's okay to live with the unknown. And have the skills and the confidence, that's another word that you mentioned earlier, the confidence to overcome them. So it's something like being, if you imagine a literal explorer, you know, you have people who are used to preparing expeditions. They have those management skills. They know what they're going to do for their 2-year trek into the unknown. But in addition to all of those skills, they have a certain attitude. They have a certain resilience. You know, they are ready for it. And that's what hopefully that's what doctoral students are, ready for their career in that sense.
I like that comparison. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. It, of course, brings many benefits that we don't have so clear to our mind unless you're practicing your practice room, you get the result and you think, I'm doing what I need to do to have this career. But research and exploration in that sense actually brings many benefits forward. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing these insights. As we conclude this interview, do you have any final advice for students besides being open and confident? And
I mean, I think that's it. Open and confident. Be flexible and don't wait.
Okay.
Just
do it. Okay,
Thank
great.
you very much.
Thank you very much.